After the ending of John Wick, Chapter 4, fans have been heavily speculating about what could come next for the franchise and whether John Wick 5 will even happen. The fourth film appears to close John's journey in a poetic and emotional way, but the John Wick universe has never been simple or straightforward. So today, let's break down the three most likely scenarios for what comes next after Chapter 4. Spoiler warning for all John Wick films. At the end of John Wick, Chapter 4, John seemingly meets his end and is buried beside his wife, Helen. If we take this ending at face value, the first scenario is simple but drastic. John Wick is truly dead. If this is the case, any future John Wick film would likely exist without John Wick himself. Instead, the story could shift focus to established characters such as Winston, the Bowery King, Kane, Mr. Nobody, or even Eve Macaro from Ballerina. This version of the franchise would expand the world rather than the character, using callbacks, flashbacks, and John's legacy as a guiding force rather than his physical presence. Standard X, while this approach could work on paper, it's also the least likely creatively. John Wick without John Wick and without Keanu Reeves would fundamentally change the identity of the franchise. Chad Stahelski and Keanu Reeves have been involved since the very first film, and the emotional core of the series has always been John himself. Removing him entirely risks turning the franchise into something that feels familiar but hollow. Because of that, while this option exists, it's probably the least appealing for both fans and filmmakers. The second scenario is one that many fans have debated for years: a John Wick prequel. This would take us back to John's past long before the events of the first movie. A prequel could explore his early life, his training under the Ruska Rama, how he built his reputation, and most importantly, his so-called impossible task for Vigio Tarasov that allowed him to retire and live peacefully with Helen for 5 years. This idea is divisive. Some fans want John's past to remain mysterious, believing that not knowing exactly how he became the Baba Yaga makes the character more powerful. Others want to see those legendary missions brought to life, showing John at the peak of his efficiency and brutality. Some fans want John's past to remain mysterious, believing that not knowing exactly how he became the Baba Yaga makes the character more powerful. Others want to see those legendary missions brought to life, showing John at the peak of his efficiency and brutality. Because of this, a full John Wick prequel film seems possible, but not necessarily ideal as the next mainline entry. That brings us to the third option and arguably the most likely scenario. John Wick is alive and he faked his death. At first glance, this may sound far-fetched. Chapter 4 is framed as a final, almost spiritual ending. John collapses on the steps, remembers Helen, and seemingly finds peace. But fans who paid close attention have already noticed subtle clues suggesting that his death may not be as final as it appears. One of the strongest pieces of evidence comes from John Wick, Chapter 3. In that film, John shoots the Doctor in very specific areas of the body non-lethal's owns to ensure the Doctor survives while still appearing punished by the High Table. These are controlled, intentional shots. In Chapter 4, Kane shoots John in the exact same regions. Later, John returns the favor by shooting Kane in similar non-lethal areas during their duel. This detail becomes even more important when we see in the post-credits scene that Kane survives his wounds, reinforcing the idea that these shots are survivable. Director Chad Stahelski has openly stated that the ending was designed to be intentionally ambiguous, allowing room for interpretation and for continuation if the time felt right. This ambiguity fits perfectly within the themes of the franchise: death, rebirth, and escape from the High Table's control. There's also the real-world factor to consider. Keanu Reeves. Keanu has repeatedly expressed his love for the character and the franchise, saying he's willing to return as long as his body allows it. While he has acknowledged that age and injuries, especially his knee, are becoming a challenge, that doesn't mean John Wick is finished. If John Wick 5 happens, it may simply evolve. Less constant physical punishment, more emphasis on John's intelligence, experience, precision, and presence. The Baba Yaga doesn't need non-stop action to be terrifying. His reputation alone can dominate a room. Finally, when you look at the expanding John Wick universe with Ballerina, upcoming spin-offs, an anime in development, and even a game, it becomes clear that John Wick is still the emotional center of this world. Letting him fade into legend rather than removing him completely feels like the most natural path forward. So, while all three scenarios remain possible, the third option stands out as the most balanced and thematically consistent. John Wick is believed to be dead, but the legend isn't over. The Baba Yaga may have disappeared, but ghosts have a habit of coming back.